ॐ परतत्त्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाख्यया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We are trying to study Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga, and we are to read 9th chapter today. The name of the chapter is The Chosen Ideal. The Chosen Ideal. Chosen by whom? That is the question. I am posing an interesting question. We feel that we have chosen a particular idea, a particular form of God. But what I feel is that God chooses the ideal for us, not we. We are not free to choose any ideal. God chooses what ideal we should choose. So, the chosen ideal. Now, before this, we have studied worship of substitutes and images, and almost all the topics of preliminary bhakti are over. But this is the last but one chapter in the first section of Bhakti Yoga, and that is the chosen ideal. Because, now, other than this, because man's mind is different. Infinite actually men's mind are. So to force the same ideal on everybody is basically wrong. And that is what happens in the narrower forms of religion. Swami Vivekananda says, even about Sri Ramakrishna, that one ideal will not inspire everybody. There will be different ideals chosen for inspiration. So, this you have to understand that my ideal need not be your ideal. Simultaneously, your ideal need not be my ideal. So, two types of mistakes we see in this world. One is the dominating type. He thinks what I think is correct. Everybody should think in that very way. You may be correct in your way. He may be correct in his way. The other man has an inferiority complex, you may say. He says that what other man says must be correct. Why should I not adopt that? No, both are equally wrong. Swamiji has described that in Hinduism, this was recognized long back. And in the same family, husband and wife, children, they need not have the same guru. They need not worship God in the same form. And one need not know what the other is worshipping. Everybody is free to worship. So, this is a main problem here. Now, let us see what Swamiji said here. The next thing to be considered, that means we have considered so many things, is what we know as Ishta Nishtha. Heading in English is chosen ideal. But Swamiji is going to talk about Ishta Nishtha. Nishtha means steadfastness. We have to stick to one ideal. If we go on changing the ideal, then we will not make any progress. But we may appreciate others' ideals and yet stick to our own ideal. That is the thing Swamiji is going to convey. One who aspires to be a bhakta must know that so many opinions are so many ways. This is Sri Ramakrishna saying, Jato mat tato pat. So many opinions are so many ways. Opinions here means philosophies, ideologies. Now accept the ideology not as the goal, but as the way. If somebody says that Krishna is superior, we accept that as his way. Somebody feels Rama is superior, so that is his way. And so, in the ancient literature, which Swamiji quoted in the Chicago Parliament, त्रयी सांख्यम योगा पशुपतिमतं वैष्णवमिति प्रभिन्ने प्रस्थाने परमिदमदं पथ्यमिति च रुचीनां वैचित्र्यात् रुजुकुटिल नानापथजुषां नृणाम एको गम्यस्तमसि पयसाम अर्णवेव. Now the Ganges and Yamuna, they start almost very near each other, but they take different courses according to the whatever route is available to them. And little beyond we'll find Sindhu, but it takes a very different course. So, Ruchinam Vaichitrat Rujukutila Nana Panurnam Eko Gammes Tamasi Payasam Arnavaiva. Like the rivers are going to the same ocean, but they take different routes. Sometimes straight, sometimes crooked. Similarly, some people say that the Vedic religion is the best. Some people say the Sankhya way is the best. Some people propose yoga way is the best. There is the Pashupati Mata. In Kashmir especially, somebody will say Pashupati Mata is the best. Somebody is Vaishnava, he will say Vaishnava Mata is best. Now, some people say it is the best. Some people say it is more suitable. Paramidamadam, Pathyamiticha. Param means superior, Pathya means suitable. So somebody will say, Pushpadanta is telling Shiva that, but they finally will come to the same goal, to you. As the rivers flowing in different directions, straight or crooked, come to the same ocean, like that will be the case. If we can understand this, then all the fanaticism, terrorism and all these things will vanish, if we understand this. But man's mind is not expansive enough. There is the other type of humanity, other type. For them, all religions are equal, because they have nothing to do with any religion. So, Sri Ramakrishna saw that in this world, there are either shallow people, not properly following any religion, or those who are following intensely, they are narrow. So, Swamiji has said, following Sri Ramakrishna, that infinite like the sky and as deep as the ocean should be man's personality. So that is proposing here. This is very important thing in our life. Otherwise we cannot be real Bhaktas. He must know that all the various sects of the various religions are the various manifestations of the glory of the same Lord. Same Lord, His glory is different religions. They call you by so many names. They divide you as it were by different names. Yet in each one of them is to be found your omnipotence. Swamiji is quoting from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Shikshastakam. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Shikshastakam, from that he is quoting. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling, Namna Makari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shakti Tatrarpita Tatra Smaranena Kalam Etavati Tava Krupa Bhagavad Mamapi Durdevami Idrishi Mahajani Nanuraga. You have made many names, you have yourself made many names, but put entire Shakti in each name. Not that the Shakti becomes divided. Not that the power of the Lord to uplift the devotee becomes divided. Names are many, but you have put entire power in all the names. They call you by so many names. They divide you as it were by different names. Yet in each one of them is to be found your omnipotence. Then he has put some dots, he is now quoting the full shloka. You reach the worshipper through all of these. Neither is there any special time, so long as the soul has intense love for you. Another point coming through that, generally it prescribed morning and evening you should worship. That is, you must worship. Does not mean that you cannot worship at other times. So long as the soul has intense love for you, you are so easy of approach. It is by misfortune that I cannot love you. Not only this, the bhakta must take care not to hate, nor even to criticize those radiant sons of light who are the founders of various sects. They are radiant sons of light. He must not even hear them spoken ill of. Very few, indeed, are those who are at once the possessors of an extensive sympathy and power of appreciation, as well as an intensity of love. Generally, this is less in people. We find as a rule that liberal and sympathetic sects lose the intensity of religious feeling, and in their hands, religion is apt to degenerate into a kind of politico-social club life. That means we are broad enough, as I told you, but we are not interested in the intensity of religion at all. It is just a social club, and we are talking in that. We have no religion practically. On the other hand, intensely narrow sectaries, whilst developing a very commendable love of their own ideal, are seen to have acquired every particle of that love by hating everyone who is not of exactly the same opinions as themselves. Exactly the same opinion. Why Swamiji is saying so? In Christianity, in Catholic Christianity, in Protestant Christianity, when Swamiji went to America, he found several sects. So they all believe in Christ, and they all believe they are Catholic Christians, and yet exactly that is not what the other thinks. And so they differ. One funny incident I will tell, told by Swamiji, that the Christians come to India and the Protestants have converted, say, 10 or 100 Hindus into Christianity. Now the Catholic comes and he converts them into Catholic religion. And in both registers they claim we have converted 100 people. So, only walking from here to there. Would to God that this world was full of men who were as intense in their love as worldwide in their sympathy. That means we have full sympathy and appreciation of what others are feeling. But my path is this and I am steady in that path. But such are only few and far between. Far between means time-wise. Yet we know that it is practicable to educate large numbers of human beings into the ideal of a wonderful blending of both the width and the intensity of love. We can educate, we can make people understand that this is possible. You can have nishtha for your ideal and yet you can sympathize with other ideals. And the way to do that is by this path of the Ishta Nishtha, or steadfast devotion to the chosen ideal. Ishta means chosen. Every sect of every religion presents only one ideal of its own to mankind. But the eternal Vedantic religion, Hindu name is not there, opens to mankind an infinite number of doors for ingress into the inner shrine of divinity and places before humanity an almost inexhaustible array of ideals. Almost inexhaustible. There being each of them a manifestation of the Eternal One. With the kindest solicitude, the Vedanta points out to aspiring men and women the numerous roads hewn out of the solid rock of the realities of human life by the glorious sons or human manifestations of God. The incarnations themselves have found out different paths suitable to different people. In Sri Ramakrishna's case, we see this tremendously. Amongst his disciples, he will see everybody had a different path, though he was teaching them together. In the past and in the present, and stands with outstretched arms to welcome all, to welcome even those that are yet to be to that home of truth. That means in future, if somebody has different ideal, the Vedanta will accept that also. To that home of truth and that ocean of bliss, wherein the human soul, liberated from the net of Maya, may transport itself with perfect freedom and with eternal joy. So you choose your path and you will come to the same ocean of bliss. Bhakti Yoga, therefore, it is important in Bhakti Yoga, lays on us the imperative command not to hate or deny any one of the various paths that lead to salvation. That should lead to salvation. Yet the growing plant must be hedged round to protect it until it has grown into a tree. When it grows into a tree, you can tie goats and camels into that. But when it is growing, then the goats will eat it, cows will eat it, so you have to protect it. The tender plant of spirituality will die if exposed too early to the action of a constant change of ideas and ideals. Many people, in the name of what may be called religious liberalism, may be seen feeding their idle curiosity with a continuous succession of different ideas. 4 days I go to this sect, 4 days I go to that sect, 4 days I go to that sect, and I say I am a liberal. You are not going anywhere. With them, hearing new things grows into a kind of a disease, a sort of religious drink mania. Let me drink this today, tomorrow I will taste another drink, then another drink. Like that they are doing. They want to hear new things just by way of getting a temporary nervous excitement. That new thing gives excitement. And when one such exciting influence has had its effect on them, they are ready for another. Religion is with these people a sort of intellectual opium eating that satisfies their intellect. Then tomorrow again they are just like opium eating. And there it ends. There is another sort of man, says Bhagavan Ramakrishna, who is like the pearl oyster of the story. The pearl oyster leaves its bed at the bottom of the sea and comes up to the surface to catch the rainwater when the star Swati is in the ascendant. That is the understanding in India. When the Swati name of a star, when it is in the ascendant, at that time some drop will fall into that oyster. And as soon as it drops, it will go to the bottom and make a jewel out of it. It floats about on the surface of the sea with its shell wide open until it has succeeded in catching a drop of the rainwater, and then it dives deep down to its seabed and there rests until it has succeeded in fashioning a beautiful pearl out of that raindrop. This is how the pearls are made. This is indeed the most poetical and forcible way in which the theory of Ishta has ever been put. This Ekanishta, or devotion to one ideal, is absolutely necessary for the beginner. What happens later? He can see that God is in all forms. First let him believe that, stick to his own ideal. When he grows, he will see that actually God is in all forms. Beginner in the practice of religious devotion, he must say with Hanuman in the Ramayana. Let us understand the story. In Ramayana, the Meghanath, Ravana's son, by his incantation, made Rama and Lakshmana bound by serpents, Nagpash. Now, the enemy of serpents is Garuda, the eagle. So Hanumanji went and requested eagle, please come. Eagle is Vishnu's Vahana. Then eagle came. And the moment eagle came, the serpents ran away because they are afraid of the eagle. And Rama and Lakshmana were released. Now, eagle is the Vahana, the carrier of Vishnu, from whom Rama has come. So, because his bhakta has done so much work, so that he should be happy, Rama appeared as Vishnu to him. And when eagle was happy, he saluted him and went away. Then Rama reappeared as man. Now when Rama appeared as eagle, Hanuman was disturbed. Hanuman became restless. He wants to see Rama all the time. So Rama is addressing him. Why you are disturbed? You are a jnani, you know everybody. Now Hanuman is saying, though I know that the Lord of Shri, Shri is Lakshmi, the Lord of Shri is Vishnu, and the Lord of Janaki, Janaki is Sita, Lord of Sita is Rama, are both manifestations of the same Supreme Being. Yet my all in all is the lotus-eyed Rama. We chant this every time in the Ramnam Sankirtan. Shri Nathe, Janaki Nathe, Abheda Paramatmani, Tathapi Mama Sarvasva Rama Kamalalochana. He says, I know well. But I got my liberation through the form of Rama. So I want that. Or, as was said by the sage Tulsidas, he must say, take the sweetness of all, sit with all, take the name of all, say ya, ya, but keep your seat firm. सबसे बसिए, सबसे रसिए, सबका लीजिए नाम, हाँ जी करते रहिए, बैठिए अपने ठाम. That is what Tulsidas said. You mix it all, you can take the joy out of all, you can take the name of all, but you remain firm in your own way of worshipping God. Then, if the devotional aspirant is sincere, out of this little seed will come a gigantic tree, like the Indian banyan, sending out branch after branch and root after root to all sides, till it covers the entire field of religion. That means he will get an experience how God manifests all the forms. Thus will the true devotee realize that he who was his own ideal in life is worshipped in all ideals by all sects, under all names and through all forms. An incident let me narrate. Sri Ramakrishna started worshipping like the Mohammedans do and completely transformed himself into that. Cap in the fashion Muslims wear, everything. And did not go to Kali temple for 3 days. People who had seen him previously were disturbed. They could not talk to him. So they told his nephew, Hridaram, you tell your maternal uncle what is he doing. So Hridaram approaches Sri Ramakrishna and says, Mama, what are you doing? He said, keep quiet, my wife. Let me experience how the Mohammedans worship my Kali. That is the sentence. How the Mohammedans worship my Kali, let me see. You keep quiet for some time. So, that is what Swamiji is quoting here. He knows that the same Kali is worshipped by them, though they may call him Allah. But how they worship, let me see. Once he wanted to go to the church. They said, but if I go to the church, Hindus will not allow me to go to Kali temple. But I want to see. So I will stand at the door and see how the Christians worship. That was his Catholicity. And yet, who has been more deep than he? So Swamiji is quoting his example for all of us to follow. So this chapter is over in this teaching only. We come to the last chapter of the first section. The method and the means. That means, what are the means we have to adopt to develop bhakti? Suppose we have no bhakti and we want to have. Then what is the method? What are the means? And this entire chapter is quoting from Ramanuja for bhakti. Though at a particular point, he will bring in the ideas of Shankaracharya also in a particular point. But otherwise, these details have been worked out by Ramanuja. I remember when we were learning in the training center, one of my friends, the book was slightly different, The Religion of Love. There this very thing is first chapter. So to memorize, what are those? He had made a formula and used to say Vakka, Vakka, VVAKKAA. These are the points to remember. I remember that thing which happened in 1968. So, that Vakka Swamiji is describing now. In regard to the method and the means of Bhakti Yoga, we read in the commentary of Bhagavan Ramanuja on the Vedanta Sutras, the attaining of that Bhakti comes through discrimination, Viveka, controlling the passions, Vimoka, practice, practice is Kriya Yoga, sacrificial work, Kalyana Guna, purity. Oh, I like to find the words again. I remember. Purity, strength and suppression of excessive joy. Anudarsha. So gradually we'll see when they come to that. And Swamiji himself might have given the Sanskrit equivalents when he comes to that. Just now I remembered only the Vakka. Now, the meaning is different. Viveka in Shankaracharya means different. Viveka in Ramanuja means different. Viveka or discrimination is, according to Ramanuja, discriminating among other things the pure food from the impure. So discrimination about the pure food is what Ramanuja is calling as Viveka. According to him, food becomes impure from three causes. Jati dosha. That is, by the nature of the food itself. As in the case of garlic, etc., those things which are highly smelling, they disturb the mind. So, that is a jati dosha. Owing to its coming from wicked and accused persons, ashraya dosha. That is the most important point. And from physical impurities, such as dirt or hair, etc., this is called nimitta dosha. The Shruti says, Chandogya Upanishad, when the food is pure, the sattva element gets purified and the memory becomes unwavering. And Ramanuja quotes this from the Chandogya Upanishad. The question of food has always been one of the most vital with the bhaktas. Apart from the extravagance into which some of the bhakti sects have run, there is a great truth underlying this question of food. Extravagance means too much. This, we should not touch this, we should not touch that, this should not be eaten with this, that should not be eaten with that. So it has become too much. In India it had become so much that Swamiji said our religion has entered the kitchen. And touch me not is our religion. But there is a truth underlying this question of food. We must remember that according to the Sankhya philosophy, the sattva, rajas and tamas, which in the state of homogeneous equilibrium form the prakriti, and in the heterogeneous disturbed condition form the universe, are both the substance and the quality of prakriti. That means they are not only guna, they are the constituents of prakriti. How prakriti functions? Sattva, raja, tama. As such, they are the materials out of which every human form has been manifested. And the predominance of the sattva material is what is absolutely necessary for spiritual development. Yesterday we read this very portion from Vivek Chudamani. So, sattva material should increase. The materials which we receive through our food into our body structure go a great way to determine our mental constitution. You know, food makes the mind. In Chandogya Upanishad, an experience has been given. Arun is teaching Shetaketu. Shetaketu says, I can't understand how food makes the mind. Then his father said, don't take food for 14 days. You will not die. Drink water. And 15th day come to me. He did that to understand this. And on 15th day when he came, his father said, tell me this mantra from the Rig Veda. I can't remember. You tell me that, I can't remember. He said, go, have some food and come back. And when he had some food and came back, he could tell all those things. So he said, see, 1/16th part of your mind had remained. You could understand, but you could not remember anything. No, just like when fuel is added, the fire becomes. So like that, after taking food, you remember. So I have not proved that food makes mind. The subtler part of the food becomes mind. The very gross part is thrown out through excreta. The middle part is what makes our body. All the elements, bone, marrow, flesh and everything. And the most subtle part goes to the mind. So, now if that food is too much of tamasic, rajasic, then the mind becomes like that. That is the idea of Ramanuja. Therefore, the food we eat has to be particularly taken care of. However, in this matter, as in others, the fanaticism into which the disciples invariably fall is not to be laid at the door of the masters. That means they have given this principle, but people make such extreme things from that. And this discrimination of food is after all of secondary importance. To correct this, he brings in Shankaracharya here, commenting on the same Chandogya Upanishad lines. Ahara Shuddho Sattva Shuddhi, Sattva Shuddho Dhruva Smriti. No, Ahara means that which is taken in. So the gross translation is food. But Shankaracharya says, we take in things through our eyes, nose, ears, and through all the organs we take in things. So we have to be careful about that. And doshas is not this jati dosh, nimitta dosh and ashraya dosh. But he will explain now. The very same passage quoted above is explained by Shankara in his Bhashya on the Upanishads in a different way, commentary, by giving an entirely different meaning to the word ahara, translated generally as food. According to him, that which is gathered in is ahara. The knowledge of the sensations, such as sound, etc., is gathered in for the enjoyment of the enjoyer. This purification of the knowledge which gathers in the perception of the senses is the purifying of the food. So this food means this, what is gathered in through all the organs has to be purified. The word purification of food means the acquiring of the knowledge of sensations. Now the defect is untouched by the defects of attachment, aversion and delusion. Such is the meaning. I eat this food because I like. He said that is bad. That is bad. I do not want this because I am averse to that. That also is bad. And delusion, I am fascinated by something. So if these three, not food, about all the sensory experiences, if we do not allow attachment, aversion and delusion to play in our life, then the senses are taking in the different experiences and that will purify the mind. Therefore, such knowledge or ahara being purified, that knowledge is purified. The sattva material of the possessor of it, the internal organ, will become purified. And the sattva being purified, an unbroken memory of the Infinite One who has been known in his real nature from scriptures will result. Dhruva Smriti. These two explanations are apparently conflicting, yet both are true and necessary. That is how Swamiji is teaching us. So though he has quoted all these things from Ramanuja, he has brought in Shankara at this point to show the higher value. The manipulating and controlling of what may be called the finer body, namely the mind, are no doubt higher functions than the controlling of the grosser body of flesh. But the control of the grosser is absolutely necessary to enable one to arrive at the control of the finer. First we must control the formation of our gross body, and then only we can control the subtle body. That is what Swamiji has reconciled both of them. The beginner, therefore, must pay particular attention to all such didactic rules as have come down from the line of his accredited teacher. What the Guru teaches has to be accepted. But the extravagant, meaningless fanaticism, which has driven religion entirely to the kitchen, as may be noticed in the case of many of our sects, without any hope of the noble truth of that religion ever coming out of the sunlight of spirituality, is a peculiar sort of pure and simple materialism. So much addiction to matter. Should not eat this, should not touch that. It is neither jnana nor bhakti nor karma. It is a special kind of lunacy. And those who pin their souls to it are more likely to go to lunatic asylum than to Brahmaloka. So it stands to reason that discrimination in the choice of food is necessary for the attainment of this higher state of mental composition which cannot be easily obtained otherwise. So unless we purify the food, then we cannot purify the intake of other senses. So both have to be managed. The next is vimokkha, as I told you. Vimokkha, controlling the passions, is the next thing to be attended to. Passions. To restrain the indriyas from going towards the objects of the senses, to control them and bring them under the guidance of the will, is the very central virtue in religious culture. Central virtue in religious culture. Don't allow the indriyas to go wherever they like. No, at this point I stopped because the modern or the American idea is don't control, let it go anywhere. And that spoils humanity. Then comes the practice of self-restraint and self-denial. All the immense possibilities of divine realization in the soul cannot get actualized without struggle and without such practice on the part of the aspiring devotee. This is a struggle. The indriyas do go everywhere and we have to struggle to control them. That is essential. The mind must always think of the Lord. It is very hard at first to compel the mind to think of the Lord always. But with every new effort, the power to do so grows stronger in us. So try, abhyas. Every time you do, you gather more strength, and finally you will be able to think of the Lord always. But with every, by practice, O son of Kunti, and by non-attachment is it attained. This is from the 6th chapter of the Gita. Arjuna says, very difficult to control the mind. Lord says, yes, it is difficult, but by practice and renunciation it can be. Says Shri Krishna in the Gita. And then as to sacrificial work, next is this Kriya Yoga. Pancha Mahayajnas they are called. They are called sacrificial work. Next point, Vivek, Vimok, and then Abhyasa. Abhyasa we have seen just now. Viveka, Vimoka, Abhyasa. That means practice. And then comes this Kriya Yoga. That is the Panchamahayajnas. Have to be performed as usual. Now, what are these Panchamahayajnas and what is the idea behind that? That in every household, even in the ashramas, if we sweep the land, some insects are killed. When we dress the vegetable, some insects are killed. When we fry something, something is killed. So like that, 5 sins we are doing every day to feed our body. 5 sins. So, to atone for that, to keep the mind pure, a man must make 5 yajnas, 5 sacrifices. Deva yajna, that means actual puja, sacrificing in the fire, thinking of the different gods. Rishi Agya, Rishis have given us scriptures, and unless we study the scriptures every day, for a householder and for everybody doing this is being told. Unless we try to recite and realize what they have said, we have a debt to the rishis. Mains, that means our forefathers. We must do some worship because they have given us the body with which we are struggling. So toward the forefathers, we must worship every day. Guests, Atithi Yajna or Nru Yajna it is called. Actually, what is an Atithi? Different from the guest, invited guest. Atithi, without any appointment, he has come to you. You must serve him like God. That is the sacrifice. And all creatures, that is called Bhuta Yajna. All creatures, birds, animals, all that. So some food is kept away for them so that they can eat. So these 5 types of sacrifice is called Kriya Yoga, and that is the 4th point, VVAK. Now, Kalyana Guna. Kalyana Guna means some spiritual merits have to be earned. That is another K. Purity is absolutely the basic work, the bedrock upon which the whole bhakti building rests. Cleansing the external body and discriminating the food are both easy, but without internal cleanliness and purity, these external observances are of no value whatever. In the list of the qualities conducive to purity, under this Kalyana Guna, Ramanuja has given certain things. As given by Ramanuja, there are enumerated Satya, truthfulness, Arjava, sincerity, Daya, doing good to others without any gain to oneself, Ahimsa, not injuring others by thought, word or deed, Anavidya, not coveting others' goods, not thinking vain thoughts, and not brooding over injuries received from another. In this list, the one idea that deserves special notice is Ahimsa. non-injury to others, because it is generally mistaken. Other things are clear. This idea of non-injury is, so to speak, obligatory on us in relation to all beings. As with some, it does not simply mean the non-injuring of human beings and mercilessness toward the lower animals. Nor as with some others, does it mean the protecting of cats and dogs and feeding of ants with sugar, with liberty to injure brother man in every horrible way. It is remarkable that almost every good idea in this world can be carried to a disgusting extreme. A good practice carried to an extreme and worked in accordance with the letter of the law becomes a positive evil. It may be good, but when it excess, it becomes evil. The stinking monks of certain religious sects who do not bathe, lest the vermin on their body should be killed, never think of the discomfort and disease they bring to their fellow human beings. They do not, however, belong to the religion of the Vedas. Perhaps he is talking of the Jainas. The test of ahimsa is absence of jealousy. The Sanskrit words come to Indian languages with some different shades. In Bengali, hinsa means jealousy. Ahimsa means absence of jealousy. So if you can practice the absence of ill feeling towards all, then we are ahimsakas. And that is essential as a spiritual merit to make up our mind to do bhakti. Method and means that we are preparing our mind to become bhaktas. The test of ahimsa is absence of jealousy. Any man may do a good deed or make a good gift on the spur of the moment or under the pressure of some superstition or priestcraft. But the real lover of mankind is he who is jealous of none. The so-called great men of the world may all be seen to become jealous of each other for a small name, so-called great men, for a little fame and for a few bits of gold. So long as this jealousy exists in a heart, it is far away from the perfection of ahimsa. The cow does not eat meat, nor does the sheep. Are they great yogis, great ahimsakas? Any fool may abstain from eating this or that. Surely that gives him no more distinction than to herbivorous animals. Herbivorous means those who take vegetarian food. The man who will mercilessly cheat widows and orphans and do the vilest deeds for money is worse than any brute, even if he lives entirely on grass. This Swami Vivekananda has learned from Sri Ramakrishna. The man whose heart never cherishes even the thought of injury to anyone, who rejoices at the prosperity of even his greatest enemy, that man is the Bhakta. He is the yogi, he is the guru of all, even though he lives every day of his life on the flesh of swine. Therefore, we must always remember that external practices have value only as helps to develop internal purity. It is better to have internal purity alone when minute attention to external observances is not possible, practicable. But woe unto the man and woe unto the nation that forgets the real internal spiritual essentials of religion and mechanically clutches with death-like grasp at all external forms and never lets them go. The forms have value only as far as they are expressions of the life within. If they are ceased to express life, crush them out without mercy. So, two V's, A, K, we have finished. Now comes Anavasada. What is Anavasada? Don't be depressed. This is a practice. If you want bhakta, don't be depressed. The next means to the attainment of bhakti yoga is strength. Swamiji tells us it has strength, anavasada. This Atman is not to be attained by the weak, says the Shruti. Weakness not only in the body, mental strength. Both physical weakness and mental weakness are meant here. The strong, the hardy are the only fit students. What can puny, little, decrepit things do? They will break to pieces whenever the mysterious forces of the body and mind are even slightly awakened by the practice of any of the yogas. So yoga will change the constitution of the body, and to sustain that we must have strength. It's the young, the healthy, the strong, that is from Taittiriya Upanishad, that can score success. Physical strength, therefore, is absolutely necessary. So here also Swamiji has added, though the mental strength is meant, physical also is necessary. It is the strong body alone that can bear the shock of reaction resulting from the attempt to control the organs. He who wants to become a bhakta must be strong, must be healthy. When the miserably weak attempt any of the yogas, they are likely to get some incurable malady, or they weaken their minds. Voluntarily weakening the body is really no prescription for spiritual enlightenment. The mentally weak also cannot succeed in attaining the Atman. That is the main. The person who aspires to be a bhakta must be cheerful. That is the main point. In the Western world, the idea of a religious man is that he never smiles, that a dark cloud must always hang over his face, which again must be long drawn, with the jaws almost collapsed. Swamiji was told by the preachers in the West, you should be like this. People with emaciated bodies and long faces are fit subjects for the physician. They are not yogis. It is the cheerful mind that is persevering. It is the strong mind that have its way, that use its way through 1,000 difficulties. And this, the hardest task of all, the cutting of our way out of the net of Maya, is the work reserved only for the giant wheels. So you have to strengthen the character, strengthening the wheel. Yet at the same time, that is the last. Excessive mirth should be avoided. Anudarshan, that is the last. Excessive mirth, you may have joy, but it does not mean you should do jumping all the time. Excessive mirth makes us unfit for serious thought. It also fritters away the energies of the mind in vain. The stronger the will, the less the yielding to the sway of emotions. Excessive hilarity is quite as objectionable as too much of sad sentiments, seriousness. And all religious realization is possible only when the mind is in a steady, peaceful condition of harmonious equilibrium. It is thus that one may begin to learn how to love the Lord. So these are the method and the means to make the mind ready to love the Lord. You have been able to read 2 chapters today because they were simple, and to remember that you should remember these names, Vivek, Vimok, etc., as I told you. So this is according to Ramanuja. Swamiji has given 2 hints. One should not go excesses into the external things is one hint. Secondly, about ahimsa. And thirdly, about food. We should adopt Shankara's idea also. We should have the proper food and we should have the proper experience of these senses. Then we are fit to become bhaktas. And then what happens to us? That comes as the second part of the book, which we will take up from the next turn. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Viresham Tam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.